Hi, I used to have insomnia and I've pretty much nearly completely gotten over it. I'm a psychologist and I have tried out many different methods, done a lot of research to figure out what works, and this seems to work for most of the people I work with. So this is a psychoeducation session to hopefully share this knowledge and assist others. If you like this video, please subscribe, and it will encourage me to make the advanced stage 2 session, because this is the part that works for most people in a short amount of time, and there's some other techniques that are worth trying if this doesn't work first. So, first of all, if you want to Google how to get a better night's sleep, you'll see a long list of do's and don'ts, and don't do that, because those things are obvious. You've probably heard them before, and a lot of those things you just won't do as well. Like in this day and age, one of the things that it says is do not look at your phone or the TV or have any other bright light just before bedtime, and we all know people don't do that. I think that's why phone companies created that blue light setting, which really doesn't make much of a difference. So I want to explain the fundamental things behind why psychologists and counsellors and whatever else make those suggestions. When you understand the biology and the way the brain works behind that, then you'll be able to be in a position of power to choose for yourself what you need to do to make the positive change, and what you can just say, oh, right, well, I can see that doesn't really apply to me. So there's a few different things to understand. First of all, there's the sleep cycles. There's also how the pineal gland works. That's the exposure to light thing. And then there's how the subconscious brain tries to wake us up with worry and overthinking, and how we can overcome that and learn to look after that part of our mind. And then there's also the normal routine and expected hours of sleep. What is the right amount of sleep that I should be getting? Obviously, having unhelpful beliefs and thinking that you should be getting a lot more than what you really need is going to set you up to fail. So then there's also discussions about that we're going to have about meditation and clock watching. See, these people who roll over and look at the clock all night, it creates another set of problems. So we'll have to go into that in detail and how you can prevent that problem. So my method is a combination of stimulus control therapy, sleep restriction, sleep hygiene, some relaxation, and meditative visualization, and a slight bit of biofeedback that you'd be doing yourself by noticing your own breathing and heart rate and such. So that method I'll explain after I've given the reasons why I suggest that method, and then you can figure out, that'll allow you to then tailor what parts of my method you need for yourself. So, the sleep cycles. I like to explain the sleep cycles as a bit like the different depths in the ocean. On the surface of the ocean, then we're awake and you can see, it's like being awake, you can see and hear everything clearly. And then just as you go below the surface of the water, then you can still see and hear things slightly murky. And the deeper you go, I'm sure a diver will correct me and tell me exactly what the stages are and depths, but say like 20 meters, it starts to get a bit darker, and then you're less able to figure out what's going on around you. And as you get deeper, it gets darker, and then to the deepest stage of sleep where you can barely are consciously aware of anything. That'd be the stage of sleep where you're not easily woken, and thankfully a fire alarm wakes us, but other than that, it can be pretty challenging to wake people when they get into that deep sleep cycle. That's after 20 minutes. We'll come back to why that's important to know about that stage soon. So when we first go to sleep, we skip the dream state, which is closest to the awakened state, which is kind of makes sense because the brain waves are fairly similar to being awake, because dreaming, you're seeing and hearing things similar to when you're awake. So that's why they put that stage as being close to the wakeness stage. Then when you first go to sleep, you skip that stage and go straight to the relaxing stage. You might have had the experience of having a sleepover and asking someone a question and they might not answer for 5 or 10 minutes, and when they do, they answer in a groggy way. You might have done this yourself. Then you think, okay, well, that person's kind of awake, but they're not. They're in a relaxed state, and technically it's part of our sleep stage. So technically they are actually asleep, but half awake. This is the stage that can cause a lot of struggles for people with anxiety, because other intrusive thoughts keep popping in and causing frustrations and emotions, and that exaggerates the physiology and wakes them up, and we'll get back to that. So then after that relaxing stage, we go into a sleep stage, and after the sleep stage, we go into the deep sleep stage. I'm summarising things here. You can look up the technical data if you like, but I'm just trying to give you what's helpful. And that deep sleep stage is after 20 minutes. Important to know that, because we spend the longest period of time in the deep sleep stage at the start of the night, and then we cycle through the stages of sleep throughout the night, depending on how long you sleep for. That could be 8 to 14 sleep cycles happening every 40 minutes. During that full sleep cycle, we get relax, sleep, deep sleep, relax, half awake again, then dream, then half awake again, then sleep, deep sleep, and so on. So we do dream every night. You actually get pretty sick, and your brain doesn't work properly if you don't dream. So yeah, you might not remember your dreams, but you do. It's part of the brain's way of consolidating memories from the day into long-term memory. So it's a very necessary, important part of the brain that happens all the time. Of course, sometimes it doesn't work as well as others, but anyway. So when we can see that we go through that cycle, and we spend longer in the deep sleep stage at the start of the night, and progressively shorter amounts of time through the night, until we get to our idealized amount of sleep. So for the average adult, it would be about 8 hours, give or take a little. And for a adolescent, ideally we might be looking at more 10 hours. I know not many of them get that. And then for smaller children, 12 hours, and sometimes as we get much older, it can go down to 6 hours being normal. So if we have a nap in the day, a lot of countries do it. It's very healthy. I do it myself quite often, just to help myself focus and be on the top of my game. But if we do it for longer than 20 minutes, you can go into that deep sleep cycle, and that sort of robs you of that ability to get to sleep easily, because your body overcomes its exhaustion and repairs itself during that stage. So when I meet people that nap during the day, I say, great, just set an alarm for 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, get up and do something. Go to the bathroom, or have a drink of water. Set your alarm again, and go back for another 20 minutes if you need it. Most people will find that after 20 minutes and they get up and they do something simple like that, they're like, actually, I feel really refreshed and I don't need to go and have another nap, which is really cool. Anyway, it's a side note. So the next thing to explain is that once you've cut out the naps, you're helping to give yourself the tendency to find it easier to fall asleep of an evening. Now, we can use the knowledge about how these sleep cycles work to trick our body into going to sleep by mimicking that relaxed state in how we are laying, in how we are breathing, in how we are holding our posture, so as to mimic the sleep state, and in how we are using our mind, so as to then mimic the dream state with some visualization and relaxation, and then go back to breathing and laying in a relaxed manner, which is mimicking that relaxed state again, and then hopefully we've tricked the brain into going to sleep. Now, yes, I know there's lots of sleep meditation things on YouTube about, breathe deep, imagine you're walking by the ocean, and a lot of people find those really helpful once or twice, and then they get sick of the same accent. So in my method, I'm going to be teaching you ways to do the same kind of thing, and I welcome you to go and look at some of those videos and try them out, because it'll give you some other ideas. But I do find it more helpful if I can explain to people the underlying principles of those techniques, so that you can then do it for yourself, and it'll be much more enjoyable and a more realistic long-term solution. So, after talking about the sleep cycles, we also need to address the pineal gland. So, there's a lot of fairly new and some controversial research on this, but what seems to be the most important things is that it's a little gland. I think it's about that size, like this, the top of your thumb, and it's like the shape of a pine cone, so that's what they call it, the pineal gland, and it's in between your eyes, about an inch back in there. And it has some of the same cells in it as your eye. So it's actually detecting light, a bit like if I hold my thumb up to the sun up there, then I can see the orange glow through it. So there's some small level of transparency. I know my photographer friend will tell me that's not transparency, but you know what I mean. That some of the light permeates through that object. So some of the light goes through the back of your eyes and touches this pineal gland. When it's detecting light, it stops creating melatonin, and when it's not detecting light, it starts creating melatonin, which helps us to sleep. That's why some people take melatonin to help them get to sleep, but generally that's only really helpful if you have some kind of problems with excessive lightness around your sleeping area, whether that be that you have a house where there's a street light straight outside and it shoots through your window and messes things up, or for some other reason like shift work or whatever else. And you can get melatonin from the health food stores, but it's a low dose. So if that works for you, great. Otherwise, if you're in that category, you can talk to your doctor and they'll give you a prescription for a higher amount if they believe that you require that at their professional discretion. And then that can be helpful if you fall into that category. So this pineal gland is something we need to nurture a bit. That towards the end of the night, we do need to try to restrict the amount of light going into our eyes. This particularly seems to be problematic for me for people who have more direct light. If you're sitting close to a computer or a phone, even if you've got the blue light setting, it's still light and it's right next to you. To me, it seems to be more of a struggle than people who'll sit 10 meters away from 6 meters away from a TV, but even that can be a struggle. So it's recommended to wind down by having your normal sleep routine, get ready for bed, or paying some bills, or reading a book for a little, something where you're not getting that direct light. But it particularly, in my experience, seems more important about cutting out the doing other things in bed. And we'll get back to that in a moment, because now I'm going to move on to explaining how the subconscious mind wakes us up, and how we can nurture, protect, and look after that part of our brain, but also put a lid on it so that it's not waking us up and destroying our life. So the brain in a human, it has something that's unique amongst all other animals, and that's the size of our frontal lobe. So if you imagine the brain as having three main sections, we've got the brainstem being the spinal cord here, and then the cerebellum, the hippocampus, amygdala, basal ganglia, and all of these central structures of the brain. That part is very similar to the reptilian brain. It's very much based on instinct, self-protection, making heart and lungs work automatically, balance, coordination, deep emotions, hunger, sleep, organising some thoughts, and then over top of that, reptiles have some of this, but mammals have a lot more of that grey matter. You'll see the knobbly grey stuff on the outside of those pictures of brains you see. So if you think of that like a fist here with all the knobbly bits, then at the back of our head here, we have the occipital lobe, that's vision, and then we have on these two, we pretty much have sensation and movement, so feeling, smelling, taste, touch, and then movement. And then around the sides, we have, like on one side, we have comprehension, and English language skills, and on the other side we have creativity, and we have Sorry, on that same side. And then on the other side we have the maths and logic and all these things. But what's most important for us to understand now is this frontal lobe. And at the front here, it contains our conscious awareness, our moral reasoning, our ability to choose what we focus on and think about, like mindfulness. And it's the part that makes us uniquely human. You know, a whale's brain might be bigger than me, but comparatively, in percentage-wise, its frontal lobe, although it exists, is a lot smaller than ours. So, the frontal lobe goes to sleep and pretty much shuts down, mostly, while you're asleep. And it's the things in this subconscious mind that are related to emotions and such that wake us up. And they need to do what they're doing. Part of what they're doing is organising your thoughts and memories of the day to shift them from the short-term memories of the day into long-term storage distributed across the entire brain in different places. So it's very necessary, but we've got to find a way to be able to cope with that, especially if you're someone who wakes up from sleep terrors or nightmares and things like that as well. So you've got an extra layer of not just the worries that occur in the moments when you're in that relaxed stage between sleep and dreaming, and back again in that relaxed stage again after the dream, but you've also got the being woken up and worried by the actual content of the dream. So anyway, this methodology should help you to tackle both of those things. So a bit more about how that reptilian and mammalian brain work and what they're doing there seems to help people have an understanding of why some of these methods are going to be helpful and why we give the suggestions we do. Because I'm not going to give you a list of do this, don't do this. You need to adapt this for yourself because those lists are so exhaustively long. It's ridiculous. So the Hippocampus is a really interesting structure that looks a bit like a seahorse, and it's on either side of that reptilian brain. And it stores the memories sequentially from the start of the day to the end of the day. So what I do for breakfast and my shower and such are all at the start, and then lunch, afternoon tea, dinner. When it gets filled up, it's when you can't concentrate and focus anymore. You're too tired because your brain's too full and it needs to go to sleep so that it can process those memories into the long term. So we don't really know for sure exactly how this is happening, but from doing heaps of reading in neuropsych and experience in my work and such, what I'm guessing is happening is that the memories, because we can see that this hippocampus is lighting up and then activating other parts of the brain during the REM, rapid eye movement, or dream stage of sleep. So it seems logical that the brain is saying, oh, okay, here's this memory, and I store things in my brain by association. For me, when I hear the word red, it makes me think of a red pillar box mailbox. When I think of the word blue, I think of the sky. But when I say red to you, you might think of blood, or tomato soup, or just the colour. And when I say blue, you might think of depressed, or a dress. I don't know. So your brain has to decide where to store those things based on the individual structure that it has. Then it stands to reason that that memory, you'd have to take it, sort of throw it around a bit and say, oh, would it go here best or there best? It's like taking all the papers from off your workbench for the day and figuring out where they have to go in the filing cabinet, but they're not stored from A to Z. They're stored by association, so there's a bit of trialing and testing that goes on. Now, the brain seems to run into some particular struggles when there are some thoughts that are related to strong emotions within those memories of the day. Fortunately, some of those thoughts can be subconscious. So if I walk past a beautiful car that's burnt to the ground, then that may trigger some of my past experience of when that happened to me many years ago. Doesn't bother me now, but it may bother my brain. It may have the associated emotional connections reactivated, and when those strong emotional connections are activated, then that often contributes to us having the more outlandish associations that we perceive as a dream, and then we may wake up and be worried about and overthink. So yeah, that leads on to another interesting discussion that dream interpretation can be very helpful, but a professional dream interpreter needs to work with a client one-on-one. I think it's weekly for a year before they start to get, don't quote me exactly on that, before they start to get accurate, helpful interpretations from the dreams. And it is really helpful, but obviously that's very expensive and unrealistic, so challenge, but a fascinating area of study. Moving along. So that's part of the brain, the subconscious brain. You could also think of it as like a 2-year-old. It works on instinct and emotion, and it serves its own needs. It is there designed to operate automatically on autopilot, as some animals do. Yeah, they have a bit of the frontal lobe and have some. Yeah, let's not get into that argument. So if that part of the brain is functioning on autopilot and those anxieties are normal and they're always going to happen every night because that's your brain sorting out the day's memories into how it can deal with placing them in long-term memory, then we've got to find a way to make space for those and accept those. Also, if we allow that subconscious brain to wake us up and to overthink during the time when we're supposed to be sleeping, then we can be teaching it that it's okay to do that, allowing it to do that. Like, if I'm looking after my 2-year-old and she picks up her dollies and wants to play with them in bed, very cute. But we nearly all know intuitively as parents that that's not a good idea, because when she wants to go to sleep later on, then she'll just want to play. She won't want to go to sleep because she's already been playing in bed for hours, and that's the modality that she's gotten into. And that's what our subconscious brain does too. If it gets used to being allowed to think in bed, then it's going to keep doing it. And as it thinks about things that have strong emotional content, then every thought we have releases some kind of emotional chemical. There's about 120 different chemicals that constantly work into balance to keep your brain healthy. And if you don't have one of those, then sorry, but you die. So you can't get rid of stress, anxiety, depression completely. No, you can't wish for happiness all the time. Sorry, we have to make a balance. And so therefore we need to train our subconscious mind that the bed is a place for sleep, and nurture it in a way that we're not being mean to it, saying, "You need to be quiet now, you cannot speak at all." Got to give it some appropriate space, and then help it to calm itself down and look after it in the appropriate ways when needed. So I'll just check here that then it's also important to look at having a normal routine for your sleep. Very challenging for shift workers. If I get enough people ask questions, then I can include that in the stage 2 advanced discussion on this, or maybe a specialist video, because there's some other ways of dealing with that challenge. I really respect how hard you guys work at working overnight in our hospitals and factories to keep everything going, because I can't do it. So they did this interesting study many years ago when we didn't really have very good ethics committees, and they were allowed to do some horrible experiments. So we don't do this stuff anymore. There's none of that, "Please lie down on the couch, tell me about your childhood." we don't really do that in counselling or psychology, so forget that. At the normal hours of sleep, they did this study where they got people and they put them in I think it was a cave, and sealed off all the light, and they took away all the clocks, and these people volunteered to be in there for a few days so that they could see how it would affect their sleep. They found that every night they would go to sleep an hour later and sleep in an hour longer on average. These people didn't have sleeping problems, like you probably do if you're listening to this, and I did. So that's showed us that our body doesn't really naturally know exactly how much it needs, and we all do feel tired when we wake up and want to sleep more. We need to have a routine for our sleep so that we can maintain a good sleeping habits. That's part of why, as parents, we need to get our kids to stay in bed or get out of bed around the same time. And as if you've been a parent or if you look back on your own childhood, that if you do slip from that and start sleeping in long periods on a Saturday and a Sunday, then you'll find it harder to go to sleep on a Sunday night and much harder to wake up on a Monday morning. So the recommendation is to try to stick to the average amount of sleep for your age group, which we talked about briefly before, and you can Google it. And then if you do want to sleep in, try not to make it more than an hour past your normal wake time on the weekends as well. Sorry. We're training this subconscious brain though. It's a precious part of who we are. It keeps us safe and gives us creativity and ideas, and it's very important. So we need to nurture this part of our mind. We can't just knock it around. Of course, there's some other struggles with age, illness, medications, pregnancy, things like that. Again, ask questions and I may make another video. A next thing to discuss, nearly finished with the psychoeducation and then we can go into the methodology, but the next thing to discuss is the effects of meditation and the problems with clock watching. So, I've noticed that Buddhist monks, who I've met a few of, don't need to sleep much at all. They are meditating for most of the day if they're doing their thing full time. And so they've sort of been in a state that's similar to that relaxed / sleepy state. So their body's already done a lot of the healing and relaxation. And that meditative relaxation state, it's fairly simple to do, and you all can do it because you do it just before you go to sleep and just after you wake up. Even if you don't sleep well, it still happens. So don't tell me you can't do that, and we'll help you get there. So don't worry. That meditation is almost as good for you as sleep. So therefore, if you're doing a meditation when you can't sleep, and then you're getting some sleep after that, then it's nearly as good as sleep. So that should eliminate that worry where you go, oh my God, it's 2 a.m. I have to be at work at 6 o'clock. How am I going to function? This is awful. I'm only going to get an hour's sleep tonight. Yeah, please don't do that. And one of the biggest problems is checking your phone or looking at one of those bedside digital clocks. Because if I wake up at 1 a.m. and look at the clock, and then at 2 a.m. and look at the clock, or probably every 40 minutes as the sleep cycle goes around, then I might look at the clock again at 2:40, and I'll go, oh no, I'll be half awake. I might slip into a dream state for a few minutes. Then I'll be half awake again. I'll look at the clock. It'll be 2:50. And I'll go, I've been awake this whole time. This is awful. I was just trying to do a meditative relaxation and I didn't get to sleep. Sorry, but you won't even know that you were asleep. I've been to a sleep clinic myself and seen other people go through it. And what happens is when they put all those electrodes on you and the heart rate monitors and the breathing monitors, and they have a infrared camera that videos you the entire time, we can prove and see that these people who thought they weren't sleeping actually did go to sleep. Happens all the time. It's a very common thing. It used to happen with my brother. When we were young kids, we had bunk beds, and as we were going to sleep, we'd talk, and then his breathing would change, and I knew then that he was pretty much asleep. And then after a few minutes later, it was probably about 20 minutes, he was going into the dream state, he would do a bit of talking in his sleep. And it was funny that sometimes I could say something back to him and he might answer once or twice, but he was very much asleep. He wasn't in that relaxed half awake state because he never remembered it the next day. So, and it didn't make sense, the replies, at all in any way. In fact, sometimes I swear he was speaking another language. It was really funny. Anyway, sorry, Andrew. In the morning, I'd say to him, how did you sleep? nearly every day he'd be like, I didn't sleep at all. I'm like, yeah, how do you know that? Oh, well, I looked at the clock at 1 and 3 and 5 and blah, blah, blah. And I just laid there looking at the ceiling. And I'm like, dude, I heard you snoring. I heard you talking in your sleep. I got up, and because you keep telling me that you don't sleep, I even prodded you, and you didn't move. You didn't know it happened. And I know that if I prod you now, you will react. You'll get annoyed about that. So I know you were asleep. He's like, no, that didn't happen. You're making it up. But yeah, so please, maybe you're not sleeping. It doesn't actually matter if you are or you aren't. What matters is that if you worry about it and clock watch, then you are increasing the worry chemicals in your body, which will increase your heart rate, increase your breathing rate, encourage you to toss and turn, wake you up more, and decrease the quality of any of the relaxation or attempts at sleep that you're doing. So conversely, if we actually say, it's not to worry about, because if I'm going to meditate, then it's better than sleeping. Then it's, oh, not better, sorry, almost as good as sleep anyway. It's better than laying here awake. So, please, let's stop the clock watching. Let's just do some meditative relaxations. I'm going to teach you how to do that now. We're going to go into the method. So the method is trying to nurture that subconscious brain and also trick it into going to sleep. And we're going to use our knowledge of the stages of sleep to mimic those brainwave patterns and also the other physiology in the body. So first of all, I lay in the position that I normally sleep in. It might be your side, back, stomach. You can ask a friend or your parent. And or the position you wake up in. And then I start to breathe slowly, like an in-breath. 1, 2, 3. Hold for a second and a half, and then an out-breath. 1, 2, 3. That's the idealized breathing pattern that promotes calmness. And if you continue to do that in a relaxed state, then your heart will naturally slow down as well, because they're very linked on a primordial level. So, or you can mimic the type of breathing that you do when you first wake up. And then it's very important to note about staying still in bed. Now, I've done some interesting study of my own by talking to nurses that I've met, that if someone's in a coma, they tell me that they only turn them once or twice a day, I'm pretty sure it is, to prevent bed sores. So that's not much. If we're tossing and turning in bed, I posit that it's actually your subconscious brain trying to wake you up so that it can sit there and think and be creative and play like a 2-year-old. So we need to teach it that tossing and turning is not appropriate. You're not going to stand for it anymore, okay? Because, you're sleeping on a mattress. Now, the research shows that apparently that a very hard surface is actually the best thing for the body to sleep on. None of you are going to do that. But if you're sleeping on a mattress, it's essentially a giant pillow. It's not uncomfortable. It's not hurting your body. That's just small anxieties in your subconscious mind going, oh, is that comfortable enough? Oh, I need to be in a comfortable position to sleep. No, you don't. You can train yourself to sleep sitting up. It's then that's not really a very hard thing. It takes determination, of course, and you have to want to learn that. You're probably not going to want to go to that extent. You can leave messages for me if you really want to know how to do that. I can actually nap on a park bench if I need to. I've done that when I've gone on huge road trips and the family's in shopping, and I've said, okay, I'm going to sit here and set my alarm for 20 minutes and have a rest on this bench sitting up. And I know it's a little strange, but it's really helpful for driving safety, and you're better late than dead. So that's the relaxation stage. You're wanting to get your body as relaxed as possible. The last thing to do in that relaxation stage is to mimic that sinking, extremely relaxed feeling that you get when you're asleep and when you first wake up. And I find there's a really effective technique called progressive muscle relaxation that you can go and Google if you like. It's helpful the first few times, but usually my clients come back and say, it's too long, it's too boring, I can't do that, I don't have the time. So I suggest a shortcut, which is the yawn stretch. When you yawn, you pretty much tense and release most of the muscles in your body, even a bit of your face. And what the progressive muscle relaxation is a longer version of that, where as you breathe in, you'll tense up a muscle group. So you might start with your hands, and then as you breathe out, you relax that, and you imagine them being like they're made out of sandbags and pulled down by lead weights, and they sink into the bed. And then with the next in-breath, you progressively work through your body to tense and release the next muscle group. So that might be forearms, and then it might be biceps. And as you breathe in, you'll be tensing up your pectoral muscles, and as you breathe out, you slowly release them. So with the yawn stretch, you just want to tense pretty much everything, and then release, and try to focus on having your whole body go quietly into that relaxed state. Once you've done that meditative relaxation, then we'll move on to the visualization, and we're nearly finished the methodology. So then we want to mimic the dream state. So in the dream state, you're thinking about random things, and the effective, helpful dreams aren't thinking about things that would worry you or that have a large emotional content. So, there's a lot of those meditation videos on YouTube that'll say something like, imagine walking along the beach. You're feeling the sand against your toes and seeing the waves crash and hearing the sound of the breeze and the ocean, and you're watching the birds and kids playing sandcastles and feeling the sun on your back. Now, note that they're going through all five senses. They're also doing something that most people would find relaxing. So just pick something that you would find relaxing and enjoyable. That could be going for a casual bike ride. That could be doing a puzzle. It could technically be counting sheep. But again, if you keep doing the same thing over and over, it tends to be boring, and then that becomes frustrating, stressful, worrisome, wakes up our subconscious brain. So that's why I say, go and try out those videos, but then come back and do the actual underlying methodology to use for yourself so that it'll be helpful. I do note that don't choose something that'll be too exciting. I don't imagine being at my family Christmas party, because then I'd be like, oh, cool. Imagine if I was talking to my Uncle Laurie, that'd be really cool to catch up and ask him about this and that, and then I might start to get excited, and that will wake me up. So we've just got to focus on what's helpful. So if I go to bed, I lay in a relaxed position, I do a meditative visualization like that. You're not really visualizing, you're just imagining all the five senses, but they call it visualization, go figure. And then I do, and once I get tired or bored of that, then I go back to that slow breathing and trying to extend the gaps between my thoughts. So in a way trying to think nothing, but accepting that your brain will still think things, because it only thinks nothing if you die. So just trying to slip into that sleep state. Then often you can trick your body to get into sleep if you have a good sleep routine and you're tired enough and you have a nap through the day. Of course, a lot of you have been going through this habit of worry and overthinking for many years, and that's why you're watching this video. So then you need to train your body that bed is only to be used for sleeping and this meditative relaxation visualization. So after about 15 minutes of that slow breathing, relaxation, visualization, and then some more slow breathing and relaxation, if you start to become frustrated, get out of bed. Do not stay in bed overthinking and being frustrated, because you're training that subconscious brain that it's okay to stay in there and be like that, and you need to get out and do something that will make you tired. Go back to trying again this meditative relaxation state. It may take 2 nights, but eventually your subconscious mind will give in, it will go to sleep, and you will get a decent night's sleep. And so long as you stick to this method, it'll work. I had very bad insomnia when I was young, and I tried out many things until I got this to work, and sometimes it recurs, it comes back. And I probably have about 3 nights a year where I have to be really strict with myself in doing this procedure so as to correct my sleep. And then I get back on track again. Now, there's one other thing to note. A lot of people these days living in share accommodation, or teens living in their parents' house, use their bedroom as a personal retreat and as a lounge room and as a study. So if you're doing that and you've got no other choice, your bed is your desk, or it is or maybe you live in a tiny house. Cool. Go environment. Yay. Thank you. I'll join you one day when I get time. The we need to find a way that you can still use your room for those things practically, as well as having the bed as a sacred sleep space. So what I do, and seems to work for most people, is that I have a lamp turned on if I'm in bed and doing anything in bed. I also make the bed lay on top of the bed, and I have a different blanket with a different texture, like a woolen blanket or a hospital blanket, and I might pull that up over if I feel like a comforter, and while I'm working on my computer or reading or anything else. And then when I'm ready to go to sleep, I'll put that blanket down, get under the flat cotton sheets that have a different texture, and turn out the light. So that then, just like if I was to be in a different environment other than this beautiful backyard with the nice trees, it feels completely different. If you have music on or the light's different, it really changes the modality and mood of the room. So that's one other way you can get around those things. Please try this out and then give me your comments, and based on my past experience of the little bits and pieces that need fine-tuning, if this doesn't work, it works for the majority of people, and even if it doesn't fully work, it's setting you up with the skills you'll need for stage 2 and or maybe stage 3. You rarely have to get to that extent, but if we do, we can help you get there. Then this is really necessary, so give it a go. Usually no more than a week or two. You can download a sleep diary. I'll place a link for that, and if you're still having struggles with sleep, you can fill out that sleep diary, and that'll give you and me the information to be able to figure out what we need to tweak to correct whatever problem is left over. Okay, best wishes and happy dreaming. Enjoy it. Enjoy the relaxation and the meditation. Take care.